Welcome into the Legislative Lounge. We are your hosts, Natebige and Professor Mike. Well, a lot has been going on over the last week or so. So we're just gonna dive right into some of the topics that we've been going over. Paying attention to the things out there with the whole inauguration coming up. Mike's wedding. Congratulations, Mike! It's this week. How you feeling, big guy?
I am already ready for it to be over. You know as well as I do when the females start congregating, the stress levels rise, and then you want to be basically non-existent as the man.
Oh Lord. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been there.
You'll
I
s-
mean, I know, I literally know the feeling. So,
you'll see tomorrow.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've lived in a house full of women my entire life, so I definitely know that feeling.
I,
uh,
I am excited. I'm definitely excited for all of us to finally get together and hang out and celebrate this beautiful occasion that I've
oh
been
man,
looking forward to for a long
it's gonna
time
be
now.
so much fun. We're gonna have a blast. The guys and I are gonna be taking you out on Friday, so um, that we look forward to that.
We'll see.
But nah, it's not gonna be nothing like that, Mike. It's gonna be a fun guys' night. It ain't gonna be nothing bad. But I mean, so a lot of news have been going on the last week or so. I guess the more pressing things as of today or this week, with the inauguration coming up on Monday, a lot of people they've started the actual confirmation hearings for some of the cabinet members. As of more specifically, today was Pete Hegseth's hearing. Did you hear anything that was
Mhm.
happening during that?
I watched a clip of it, and you know it kind of highlighted the hypocrisy of those that are trying to condemn him. And I saw a gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he basically saying that, you know how can you sit there and complain about this man allegedly having a drunk interaction when we've seen on countless occasions senators arriving to meetings drunk, when
Right.
senators cheat on their wives, and just a lot of hypocrisy. And these confirmation hearings are, in my opinion, nothing but show.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just for them to kind of like press their way through and just, if they're not on your side, right, it's their way of like trying to expose people to so they can fit narratives as the person. Because I mean, we already know, like it's already been reported through multiple streams that every single one of the cabinet members, which is breaking news for those that aren't aware, every single cabinet member per the count has enough votes now to be confirmed, including Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr., which are probably the two most controversial ones of them all. But that has been confirmed by a couple different senators. But more specifically, in regards to Pete Hegseth, if people don't know, he's going to be the Department. I'm sorry, the Secretary of Defense,
Hmm.
and was it a Senator Kevin Kramer, which is a Democrat, actually was apologizing on the behalf of the Democrats' behavior during the hearing today because they were literally, just going after him about scenarios that have never happened and, what ifs and all this and trying to judge it on that. And it's like, that's not what I mean, you're literally saying, what if? Like, how is any,
Yeah,
how is it good?
there was a woman speaking to him, and basically kind of going into his background, his resume, so to speak, and saying, "Oh, you've only led 200, 200 individuals," and it's like, I challenge the hundreds of members of Congress. What are your qualifications in regards to leading people?
Right. Most of them, I mean, most people in Congress are just individuals that have, some kind of law background and no actual experience with leading people. I mean, they're just lawyers, a bunch of them, and it's just annoying to see that. And who you were talking about was Senator Christine Gillibrand. I can't ever pronounce her name, but yeah, that was the one that was basically going in on him about nonsensical just background that what if scenarios and all this other stuff. But I don't know, but there has been a lot of movement within Congress this last week. They've been in, the 119th Congress has really gotten to work as of lately, and I mean, there's a lot of things that have been coming out. Like as of today, Representative Anna Paulina Luna actually reintroduced legislation that I think it should. If you're not a sick, deranged individual, it should pass. It's legislation allowing pedophiles to receive the death penalty. So I mean, if
100%.
if you object to it, please, please make yourself known. I want to know exactly who you are.
We here in Arizona, just this past election cycle, we made it a law that if you are a pedophile, you receive life in prison. Done.
That's how it should be. Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even, a lot of people talk about if it's been proven, right? They've been convicted. It's been proven that they did this thing to a child. They should not even have a life, in my opinion. My bad.
Well, honestly, that I hear the arguments in that aspect. When they weigh the death penalty and then life in prison. Oh, the death penalty is much more expensive because of the appeals process. Well, my friends, 556 is 43 cents a round.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and
And
if there wasn't so much showboating and political motivation and political handshakes being made behind closed doors in these court proceedings, there would be a lot more convictions, a lot more harsher penalties towards people that commit crime.
I mean, the whole justice system in itself is just there are so many issues with it. Like it's got its good, but there are just so many things that are bad about it in the way that the unconventional way of convicting somebody with a sentence of this, and but somebody over here on a different part of the country is convicted for the exact same thing and they get a different sentencing and things like that. Like it's just flawed in itself. I'm not one to be here saying, "Oh, it's out to get anybody of any particular origin or race or anything like that." I don't believe in that nonsense. But anyways, in regards to the whole, I'm having some. Yeah, hopefully y'all ain't hearing this, but I'm be hearing something on the background.
Is it like Jarble?
It was for a second.
I can hear it a little bit, but it's not that bad, and it does correct itself. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you that there's not a lot of evidence to point out that the court system solely goes after somebody of a specific skin color or race or what have you. Um, there is a sense of, I will say, there is a sense of classism in regards to the court system because your representation is based on what you can afford, and most of the people that commit crimes or are accused of committing crimes can only afford the appointed public defender, and who
Right.
is bombarded with cases and is usually a young lawyer or representative or attorney, whatever you want to call them. Which is why it's very important that you read that way you can represent yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to the whole class system in the court system, it is definitely a very real thing. But there's no ties to in regards to your ethnicity or your background or your religion, and it has to do with money. Simple as that. If you got money, you're in a good spot. And unfortunately, that shouldn't be the case, but it is.
Mhm.
So, but oh,
100%, and that's because man is valuable.
mhm. And anyways, digressing off of that for a little bit, getting back to Congress. So like I say,
Yes.
they've been quite busy this week. Some more interesting pieces of legislation to have come out. I know throughout the entire campaign, Donald Trump was one of his biggest things was the whole tax on tips, getting rid of federal income tax, getting rid of tax on overtime. And there is a piece of legislation that has been introduced a few different times with revisions each time it's been. But as of recently, HR 25 is also another piece of legislation that would implement basically exactly what he's been talking about in regards to that and enacting a national sales tax. So this, I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of people have a problem with this because they think that it's gonna, hurt the underclass. But in all reality, it's not. If you get rid of the income tax and other taxes in regards to the IRS and getting rid of the IRS in general and enacting a flat tax of, let's say, 7 to 10% across the board, that first of all would be more than enough to fund the national, programs and all this other nonsense that we pay to other countries. But also it would level the playing ground for all these people whining about the top 1%, the one paying their fair share, even though they pay over 80% of the total of our federal income tax that we do operate with. But it would be more on their side because who spends the most money? It's the people with the money,
Mhm.
right? So it would in turn solve both problems. It would allow the middle class and the lower class of American workers to not be overly taxed on literally everything from A to Z, and their paychecks. I mean, we get our paychecks taxed, then we get a tax on our property, and then that's taxed, through the schools, and then we have the tax on our food and our, just everything is taxed. It's crazy.
Well,
But you get
if they go down the line of instituting this flat rate, national sales tax, that actually aligns more with Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, right? All taxes and, excises are supposed to be uniform across the board, and the
Mhm,
fact that that we the people have allowed Congress to kind of finagle the, amendment process and allow for all taxes on all sources of income and associating and, creating a bracketing system based on how much you make. So
mhm.
is, you know, is a travesty. Like, you're basically being penalized because um, you are incorporating your ingenuity and you're being innovative and you're being penalized for it. So that is not what the American dream is supposed to be. American dream is supposed to be you bring innovation to the table, you make America
Right.
better, more prosperous, and you create a life for yourself and you build generational wealth.
Absolutely. Now we can't really dive into it. We were hoping for to really dive into the newest version that was just introduced on the third. However, Congress has not actually uploaded the text, because that is what we do for you guys on the legislative lounge is we dive into these. We were hoping me and Mike did find the last one that they introduced. I believe it was 2021 was the last time it was introduced. That was the newest model or version I could find myself, but I skimmed through that. It's 133 pages, and I liked
Mhm,
basically everything in it. So if it has that
mhm.
plus some other items like what Donald Trump is wanting to do with the, no tax on overtime, no tax on, tips, things of that nature, because the first one didn't have all that because that wasn't talked about until June this year or whatever when he first brought it up. But again, we don't know that the what the flat tax is. But like we
Mhm.
said, it eliminates both problems that we have. Our problem of most Americans that what most Americans care about is the fact that we're taxed on everything. It'll take all
Yeah.
those taxes away and give us one flat rate. And then it will appease the whiners that say, oh, the 1% need to pay their fair share because they're going to be the ones paying the most tax because they're the ones that spend the most.
Well,
So
I think it's
win
silly to
win,
cry about a national sales tax when you're already paying sales tax and everything that you purchase in the market.
right? Absolutely. So,
And, for those that are, wondering, this, this piece of legislation that Nate's talking about is reintroduced every time a new Congress is, implemented. So, when, the 119th, the 118th, the 117th, and I believe it's been introduced, by the same person. I believe it's Mr. Carter, correct?
yes, what's his name? Earl Carter. Yep,
Yeah.
Earl Carter.
So, I know he introduced, I believe, the last 3 versions. I
Yeah.
don't know if he introduced any prior to that, but they've all read primarily the same way, and and to summarize it like Nate did, is to cut out all the bullshit and create a uniformity as it's applied to the tax system.
Mhm. And there's 11 sponsors on this bill, stemming from all over the nation. from Georgia, Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas. For anybody that likes the details on the information, but um, so once we get that information, once they upload it, the newest version, me and Mike can really dissect it and get into that for you guys and give you the details of it, because I personally believe this will be the piece of legislation that's going to promote the whole campaign narrative of getting rid of the tax on tip and all that. So I can't wait to read that. Once we have it, we'll definitely report on it. Again, just as a quick note, we'll say it a couple times tonight. We will not be having a Monday show next week because of Mike's wedding. I will be flying back, and I was a dummy and didn't realize how early that flight was, so I will be deceased all day.
I have to drive you. You're gonna be deceased. We're gonna be deceased.
Look, first of all, you grew up in the military, basically, so you're used to getting no sleep. I ain't.
Yeah, well, I got in trouble for falling asleep on the couch yesterday.
Yeah, I know, Megan. She told me. You need to
So
clean your snake's cage.
if y'all were expecting our podcast yesterday, I apologize. I was tired. I was
Okay, there we go.
basically running 25 hours. So,
It's
and
all his fault. But yes, typically we are Mondays at 7 p.m. Mike has been running rampant because he's gearing up for his wedding this week. So we give him a pass for it.
yeah, by gearing up,
One pass.
uh, by gearing up means going to the gym and trying to look presentable for the best day of my life, and trying to make Nate look bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to be a tall task even when I am fluffy. But, anyways, stick around till the end, guys, because we do actually have some really good news. We might actually go through a rebranding for this year as well. I know we've only been around for a few months, but me and Mike have been looking at a couple different options of rebranding because of the big news that we're about to announce tonight. So stay with us as we continue. And at the end, we are going to announce something that is huge for the podcast. And we can't wait, honestly. And it's only going to be in a week and a half. So, anyways, getting back to the legislation, like I said, Congress has been working a lot. I know Trump has actually promised to sign any constitutional concealed carry reciprocity act. For those that don't understand, there's about 40 states that have reciprocity, and what that means is that if I'm licensed, for instance, here in the state of Texas to carry concealed, I can go to any of those 40 states legally without having to obtain a license there, as it has the reciprocity. My license travels to that other state. However, what they're suggesting is that Congress present a bill that actually gives it to all 50 states, which would be absolutely epic and would align with the Constitution of shall not be infringed. I know Mike likes to talk about that. So, I mean, how do you feel about that, Mike? I don't know if you even heard about that.
Yeah, I was um even I as your partner and co-host, of this platform, I watch your videos because even I learned things, and you had brought and I believe you brought it up with the reciprocity.
Mm,
And when it comes to that, it's a stepping stone. Um, constitutionally constitutionally speaking, uh, we shouldn't need something like that
right.
because the federal constitution supersedes any type of regulation as it pertains to the individual. So
Mhm,
that's not to conflate that with the thousands of regulations that are forced onto commercial uh, firearm regulations.
mhm.
Um, but reciprocity in all 50 states and soon to be the Greenland territory should be great.
That's a good. Actually, that was going to be the next thing I bring up too. So, a lot of people have been talking about this whole situation with Greenland, and everybody's like freaking out about Canada. It's like, first of all, Canada is just like a strategic trading standpoint with Donald Trump. Like, people need to understand what he's doing there. Now, Greenland, on the other hand, is not an actual country. It is a territory, just like the territories that we have, Guam, all these. They're not
Yep.
an official country, but it is a territory of Denmark, and it is land that we could potentially purchase. However, it just
Hmm.
has to go through certain legal channels. However, there was two Congress people, Marjorie Taylor Greene and I can't, the other guy's name is slipping my mind, but they presented a bill just recently. Now, whether or not it actually goes through is a whole nother question at this point, basically. But
Oh
it'll
dear.
it gives the actual power to the president to start the negotiations at least.
Mhm.
So that's interesting all in itself.
Well, so what's interesting about that, right, is there were talks, Trump bringing it up about purchasing Greenland, right?
Mhm.
And it's a strategic move because of the proximity of Greenland to Russia, right?
Mhm.
And the natural resources thereof. Now, Denmark, you know, got caught wind of this obviously, and they actually talked with the Trump administration about allowing a larger military presence in Greenland. Now, I don't know what Trump's going to do with that. I think it would actually be more beneficial if he just purchased it, like we purchased Louisiana, and went that route and expanding United States protections in that territory. Actually, there was I want to say a Quinnipiac poll regarding 54% of the citizens polled in Greenland actually want to become part of the United States. So I found that to be quite interesting. I found that our neighbors to the north um, are starting a MAGA revolution of their own, especially seeing how Castro 2.0 decided to resign, and
Uh,
you and I called that,
yep,
and
absolutely.
I could see us, I honestly, if there was ever a time when Greenland and Canada were to join this nation, it would be in these next 4 years.
For sure. Now, personally, I don't think there's going to be any point of when Canada actually becoming part of the United States. It can't, just because of the way that it's set up. It like they literally, they couldn't. They couldn't because of how their government's set up, how ours is, and there's a whole facet of things that they would have to jump through. It would take much
Mhm.
longer than the 4 years for it to actually happen, but what it is it's a strategic trading um,
That's true.
chess move, you could say,
Mhm.
basically, right? And what it is it's basically trying to scare. We'll be honest, Donald Trump trying to scare Canada into coming to the table, and guess what? You got premiers of I think Ontario that it even came out talking about the trade deal where it would allow for more uh, trading directly with Canada in regards to electricity and natural gases. And honestly, a lot of what is it? Over 90% of the oil that's even purchased from Canada is purchased by the US. So those trade deals would allow us to not manipulate, that's a bad word, maneuver for our benefit
Mhm.
along with helping Canada. Like we're not out to, starve them because their country's doing a good job of doing that themselves. But making going it goes all the way back to even his first term with the whole what was it? The not now it's the USMCA, but was it NAFTA? Was it what it used to be called NAFTA?
Uh,
And that was the trade agreement
yeah.
between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, where it extremely favored the other two countries over us, which seems to be a reoccurring theme with anything the United States does, especially when it comes to like things like the UN and whatnot. But I digress. Anyways, in this agreement, it would allow for us to actually have more strategic, maneuvers within the electronics or electricity and natural gas arena.
So, for those people that are kind of like trying to understand the process, and it's quite nuanced on how Canada could even start the process of joining the United States. So Canada falls under the constitutional monarchy that is implemented by the United Kingdom. So we would eventually have to go to the motherland and start negotiations where the power structure exists. And so it's quite it'd be an intricate intricate
Intricate.
yeah intricate. I'm having pronunciation problems. I'm pulling a Nate. Um, and it'd be a process, and it would take quite a bit of time, probably after Trump's term. But I'm not going to completely dismiss it, regardless of how unrealistic it is, just because Trump has pulled some unrealistic moves, and they've surprised the hell out of me.
Hmm.
Um, like Greenland or something silly as which I believe is just a trolling tactic with the Gulf of America.
Well, honestly, actually, there's another theory behind this. So it's a good thing that you actually pulled that up. So a lot of people have been talking about how Biden has actually executed his executive power to um, basically ban offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's
Mm.
being done through actual legislation as well as his executive order. So the theory is that because the wording is Gulf of Mexico, by changing the name he can actually skirt around that bill and allow for drilling in the Gulf of America.
Now, was it a bill or was it an executive order?
So it started out as him actually doing it as an executive order, but there has been talks about actually making it into law, but I don't think they're going to have enough time to do it. But
No.
in either
So,
way, but that's just in case, which I don't think he's actually going to do it because I think that was just a way of getting to the point because of saying to Congress like, nah, we ain't doing this, dog. Because what'll happen is Trump will just get in office on the 20th because the rumor is he already has was this was almost a week ago. This rumor came out is that he already has previewed over 100 different executive orders for day one. One of them will
oh yeah,
be overturning that ban for offshore drilling.
oh yeah, and you know, with that, and the coming, the the inevitability of Trump in office, there have been so many people. I guess then there's a narrative going around that the inauguration is canceled um, due to X, Y, or Z um, reasons, like X being it's MLK Day and they want to cancel it, or there's some type
Blowing
of
on.
congressional, backdoor, behind the door shenanigans going on. I'm
Oh,
sorry to all of you that believe, you know, the mainstream media or people like Harry Sisson, Dean Withers. Like, you need to start listening to people that bring you sources and facts and actually understand the constitutionality of the inauguration. It happens exactly 3 weeks after, um, the certification, if I'm correct.
yep. And this is my response to it. Blue and on alert. Blue and on alert. For all the crazies out there that talk about how, oh, Donald Trump isn't going to be, he isn't going to be inaugurated. They're going to stop it and all this other stuff. Like, you guys sound just as crazy as QAnon, which is why I have dubbed you Blue Anon.
So, that also, leads me to my next little bitty topic, which is something else that came up. Apparently, California has raised, I don't know how they raise this money, but apparently if I understand it correctly, because government doesn't have money, they have tax dollars, which is given by the people, um, forcefully given. They have raised $50 million to fight against the deportation agenda of Donald Trump and Tom Homan. And Tom Homan has come out and said, if you get in my way, you'll be prosecuted. And I hope they get in his way because that is the only way you will get these individuals out.
Absolutely. I was going to go
I'm
to California right now, but yeah, absolutely. That's definitely. I mean, there's been some theories about them funneling that money from Act Blue, which is going to be investigated heavily over the next couple of years because there's a whole issue with Act Blue. And if you're not familiar with what Act Blue is the primary sourcing fund for the Democratic Party and sponsoring, funneling money basically for Democratic
I'm curious.
primaries and candidates.
Yeah, I'm curious. Why are all the attempted you know the, the assassination people, the alleged assassinators, why are they all connected to them? That's interesting. That's my QAnon hat for the day.
Mhm. Mhm. There's
So that's
another.
interesting.
Oh, sorry. But here's
And
a
then
whole
you
nother
have
issue
the
that I
right.
have with the Democrats, Mike, and I don't even know if you know about this yet because I don't know if you were sleeping earlier because I don't know if you worked last night or not. But just a few hours ago, the House passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025, right? So the problem that I have with this is it's a straightforward bill to protect that are my girls from having to compete against mentally insane guys that think that they're females and who have a biological and just a physical advantage over them, strength, speed, everything, to take away from what our women and our girls are working so hard for. However,
Mhm.
the issue is not a well, no, I shouldn't say not a single. There were two Democrats that voted for the bill. The remaining of them all voted against it.
Well, they got to
I
stick with the narrative.
like this is the side that's supposed to be on
They
the side of women's rights, though, right?
no, well, yes, they're on the side of women's rights, but the identity of a woman. Yes, my friend. And there's actually a Supreme Court case um, that solidified that the Title IX changes that Biden uh, created are done away with
Hmm. Right. I saw
nationally.
that.
So that Title IX, for those that don't know, is a sex-based protection on ed- educational spheres that receive federal funding. So those educational spheres that have sports programs, they can no longer use gender identity
Mm,
to include those individuals that want to identify as things that they are not to get on sports teams to where they have a biological advantage. Now, when Nate and I talk about, men having a biological advantage, this is where you're going to get a little bit of the nerdy Mike and Nate. Men have higher levels of testosterone, which lead to faster development of muscular tissue, muscle fibers, tendon development, um, and you also we also have more developed lung capacity. Um, so that's not to say that there aren't exceptions to the rule, but the
mhm,
norm is that when it comes to sports, men are superior on average, and this has been played out. Um, I'll bring up Serena Williams. She played against like a very low tier tennis player, and he stomped her. So this is
mhm.
why like you will never see biological women, try to weasel their way into men's sports. You will only see um, just poor performing, mentally insane men try to weasel their way into women's sports,
I mean,
i.e.,
people,
William Thomas.
of course, they'll use the just absolute asinine remarks of, "Oh, there's girls that play football." Yeah, because they play kicker here and there doesn't make them an, an exception to the rule.
Put that girl up against the linebacker.
That's what my whole thing is like. I know there's this one girl, I guess in high school somewhere, she's like a quarterback or running back or something. She's pretty decent, but then again, you got to look at the actual, who is she playing because that does matter. It really does because the high school I played for, we played against literally nobody's. That's why
Well,
nobody in our league went to college anywhere for football.
mhm. And then this topic is it shouldn't be controversial.
No.
Um, and this topic actually stems from women in combat roles in the military. It
Hmm.
started at the military and gradually progressed into society. And me personally, I do not believe that women should be in combat roles because when you're in that type of job, you have direct contact with the enemy, and the enemies that we have been facing since 2011, the global war on terrorism, are terrorists. And They do not operate under any type of Geneva Convention. They do not operate under any type of ROE. If you are captured and you are a woman, you the type of torture that you will be subjected to. I'm talking gang rapes. I'm
Mhm.
talking the worst. I mean, sold into sex trafficking. Like you, it's one thing to be tortured as a male, where where it's honestly torture is torture, but it's not as bad as what they would do to a female, and that's the
Right.
reality. And that's just my personal opinion. There are amazing women who are very good in those combat MOSs, and I have trained women in combat MOSs myself. Um, but it's not something that I directly support.
Right. And I
Real,
don't disagree. I never served myself, but I don't disagree with what he's saying because it makes sense. I mean, we as men that a lot of people on the left will be like, "Oh, this is misogynistic." I don't give a damn. Our job is to protect our women and children, and that's what we should do. And that doesn't mean that we need to eliminate them from certain positions in the military, whatnot like that. But we do also need to protect them there because, like we said, but men, whether they're from the Middle East or they're American soldiers, they have a biological advantage over our female soldiers. So if captured, all of what Mike just said will happen. Unfortunately, sticking
mhm.
along those
And it won't
lines,
just
though.
happen.
Oh,
It won't
but
just happen in those countries that have extremist sects of Muslims. It'll happen in near peer Viet
yeah,
Cong, Russia, China. These people do not
unfortunately,
operate. These people don't operate under the same rules and regulations that we operate on.
unfortunately, there's cases within our own military ranks where
Hmm.
things happen.
Hmm.
So it is. I mean, that's why we have to take that extra step. But sticking along these lines, another piece of legislation that goes along with protecting our women is the Lake and Riley Act.
Yes.
Everybody knows about Lake and Riley in the state of Georgia that was unalived brutally. That was recorded for what 17, 8, 19 minutes, where you can literally hear her dying. It was the most
Mhm.
horrific thing. I just happened to stumble upon it. I didn't seek it out, but I didn't watch the whole thing. I just heard a little bit of it. I'm like, absolutely not. But they passed a legislation called the Lake and Riley Act that basically holds the individuals which is kind of weird why they named it this because it should have been something else. But it just has to do with theft from an illegal immigrant, holding them accountable for theft. In regards to those means where if they're here illegally and they break and entering or they do some kind of theft or whatnot like that, it imposes harsher sentences for them. But the thing about it though, again, these are illegal individuals committing another crime. Yes, and I'm going to say another crime because them being here is a crime in all of itself if they're not here legally. So if 159 Democrats voted against this bill. Holding people accountable is their whole mantra, right? The whole thing, and nobody's above the law unless you're trying to
Only if
push
you
a narrative.
only if you're orange and you have bad hair.
I mean, I cannot fathom the what goes through these people's minds. It's almost to like then they wonder why we always think, oh, there's always an agenda behind. I mean, it's because like not this doesn't make sense.
This
That's
so
why.
they're gonna stay on this bandwagon, and they're gonna wonder why they continue to lose. Um, there was Joe Biden actually pushed out a statement on X saying that Kamala Harris has his full confidence in being the 2028 Democrat nominee, and I pray that she runs again because if y'all didn't notice, she totally botched the Pledge of Allegiance. My first grader, first grader knows the Pledge of Allegiance. Say it every day.
Kindergarten does.
Like this, this. If you're planning on becoming any type of official in government, you should probably know the Pledge of Allegiance.
You would think, right? Not in this world, and that's why we're sitting here telling each other, like, well, "Why do you guys always think there's an agenda?" Because nobody logically thinks this way, naturally. Like, there's gotta be something
Mhm.
else behind it because it does not make sense to think this way for anybody,
Money.
especially if you're on the side of women's rights and we need to protect, nobody's against above the law, but then you do the exact opposite. It's like there's obviously some reason you're doing it, exact opposite of what your whole mantra is.
But they're not. They're not doing this. They're not doing the opposite. I'm gonna go back in history real quick. So, in the 1850s and 1860s, the abolitionist movement was growing at a rapid pace. 1854, the Republican Party was born, conceived by Black Americans. The opposition against slavery was growing exponentially, and the arguments from Democrats was well, if there are no slaves, who's going to pick the cotton? Okay, let's fast forward to 2025. No, 2024. Um, if there are no illegal immigrants, if there are no illegal aliens, who's going to pick the crops? Who's going to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do? They're making the same arguments. They're just using a little bit different language, and
Mhm.
a lot of Americans are falling for it. They're like, oh, who's Americans aren't going to pick the crops? No, you're lying. We have plenty of people here on workable visas that come from those countries where these people are coming from that can do those jobs. And those people on workable visas actually get paid a proper rate.
Right. I mean,
So they're not
it's
being
weird,
they're not
the
being
whole
lowballed.
that kinda goes into the H1B whole scenario with Elon Musk, but I don't know if you were in the live with us, but it was me and LJ, we were in the live with an individual where we were going back and forth about this scenario, and he said to us, this individual was like, "Yes, I'm okay with paying slave labors to children that are being underpaid in terrible situations, as long as the product is cheaper." And LJ, our friend, for those that don't know, he knows who I'm talking about, reiterated this back to him in those basic words of what I just said. And he said, yes, straight faced. I'm like, this is a leftist.
Yeah. But it's the narrative that has been driven for so long, and people, unfortunately, we have gotten dumber in society, and this is very evident with the illiteracy rate in this country, which is 21%. That's 1 in 5 Americans. That's 65 million Americans do not possess the ability to read or write. 85% do not possess the ability to comprehend above a sixth grade reading level. That is terrible, and this is why the Democrats and Rhino Republicans are able to just brainwash you and say some nice flashy stuff, but don't look behind the curtain.
Mhm. Well, hopefully Donald Trump and Linda McMahon, who's going to be taking over the Department of Education for, well, as long as it's supposed to be around, or at least revamping it is my hope. And making, giving education back to the states in a full capacity, allowing them to actually, do what they should do for these children rather than the non-school stuff that we see in schools nowadays. I mean, even here in Texas, we're fighting just the most ridiculous things. Like, for instance, there was a mother, here in the county that came to a school board meeting complaining because her kitten couldn't use litter box.
What?
Yeah, you heard me. Her daughter,
Um,
a human being who identify or no, I think it was her son actually. Her son identifies as a cat and was complaining because there wasn't litter boxes in the bathroom.
um, so I'm gonna lay down my position on this subject. That is child abuse, and that woman child should be taken from her.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, what are we doing? You allow your child to use the bathroom at your home in a litter box. I swear there's been movies of this where you see people in chains having to use, newspapers and whatnot to go to the defecate on, and they've been charged with crimes. So to see this is just it's beyond my understanding. Here in Texas, it should not be happening. I don't care if it's Houston or not. Oh, that's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. I know I mentioned it before we went live, but to change the topic a little bit, the
Yeah.
reason I haven't been paying too much attention to the news because it's like a regurgitation each week with a little bit of new legislation, where the text isn't released, which I do keep up with Congress.gov. But what's been catching my attention is this podcast that had um, ran in October and then was released in December, between Billy Carson and Wesley Huff. I don't
Oh.
know if you know. I don't know if you know who
Yeah,
those
I know who
individuals
they
are.
are.
So, um, for all of you that don't know, Billy Carson is a gentleman that's been going around for I think more than a decade, basically saying that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ never happened. And Wesley Huff in this podcast, which you could just YouTube Wesley Huff and that video will come up. Wesley Huff, Billy Carson debate. Um, Wesley Huff very, like, very, very kindly just debunks him flat out. And I'm about to get the biggest eye roll from Nate when I mention Billy Carson's references as to why Jesus was not who he is and was not crucified. So at first, um, Billy Carson decided to bring up the Mount Sinai Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and which is a false interpretation of a piece of actual scripture, um,
The
a
funny,
Greek translation.
but the funny thing
I think
apart
it's the
about it, Mike.
Sciaticus.
Yeah, sciaticus. The funny part about it, though, like he uses that saying that nowhere in that the cyanide Bible does it say that he was crucified. The problem is it does.
I know. And then he said he's he didn't s- he misspoke. He meant to say the Gospel of Barnabas,
Yeah.
which for anybody that could just Google the Gospel of Barnabas is a known forgery. So the Gospel of Barnabas was uh, written by a gentleman that's uh, it's only written in two languages, Italian and Spanish, and it actually uh, makes paraphrases. It paraphrases Dante's Inferno. So Dante's Inferno was produced in 1314. So
Hmm.
um, he also tries to use the gospel, um, a gospel of Jesus' wife. So there's some speculation that went around that is not accepted by anybody with a brain, and I mean linguists, historical scholars, or anything like that about Jesus being married because there was, and I want to say it was either Gospel of Thomas. There was a false assertion regarding Jesus and Mary of Magdalene.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So the problem is
Mhm.
people do not actually do proper research and they do not connect the dots because you can actually go through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and connect them all the way back to the original apostles. And
Mhm.
there's even been falsities regarding people who mistranslate the Dead Sea Scrolls. So please, 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 before you decide to, you know, make statements about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which has been fact checked and legitimized not just by the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, but also Roman accounts that were secular,
Mhm.
Roman accounts that were, part of the belief system of um, multiple gods. Um, like, check yourself.
Polytheism. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
I
believed in
couldn't
the
think of the word.
Roman gods, like I don't even know
But
what the
it's a very interesting podcast, and, Wesley Huck does a very beautiful job of just basically asking for his sources and then providing the correct answer.
right. And I saw I didn't watch the whole thing. I've seen clips from it because I just know, Wesley Hunt just absolutely is just a dog when it comes to this stuff. I mean, the guy is like fluent in like 27 languages, but besides that,
Yeah,
uh,
he brought up Hebrew, Greek,
he,
Akkadian.
yeah,
He tried to learn Sumerian.
yeah, he's crazy, man. It's crazy. But the funny thing about the whole him in the Cyanide Bible is, in that podcast he said that, oh, it was just a misspoke. And then I saw somebody put a compilation of like, I don't know, 13 or 15 different times that he's referenced that same thing. It's like, so you misspoke about 15, 20 times.
Yeah, he speaks about that. He speaks about, uh, the, he goes into the Old Testament about Genesis utilizing older tablets or something like that. It's
I mean,
it's
just
it's
just so
wild.
y'all know, Billy is an individual that believes in the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki is a far-fetched scenario where these, illustrious being godlike things come from a different galaxy, came down and basically mated, or they messed with the DNA of the species at the time just to create Homo sapiens, and just some off the wall Mormon type nonsense kind of stuff. And in all reality, what he's not understanding is the Anunnaki is just the Nephilim from, or not the Nephilim, the offspring of that. It's the fallen, the 200 fallen from the book of Genesis. It talks
Mhm.
about them in the book of Enoch as well, and several others of the Apocrypha. So, I mean, it's nonsensical. It's like, how can you be so intelligent but so dumb at the same time?
This is something else that, Nate and I do. We don't just read legislation. We also Nate's much more, diverse and understanding when it comes to biblical scripture. I'm learning myself, but I read. We
Mhm.
read biblical scripture, actual biblical scripture. Nate's actually, he's done the legwork in regards to reading Greek and Hebrew, and, that comes from
I have a lot.
his
I gotta.
mentorship.
I'll put it out there. I do have a lot of help. My dad is actually a theologian, so he has his PhD in theology with primaries in Jewish and um, Muslim culture. So
Mhm.
he is fluent in Greek and Hebrew. So I have a good reference point.
Yeah. So, it's, we do this legwork, so, we have sources and we have substantial evidence to bring in regards to making our claims, because you'll you will rarely find a claim that Nate and I make without any type of legislative foundation or biblical scripture foundation or health and fitness foundation.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely. And I mean,
so
but one last thing that I really wanted to talk about, because the whole reason we even started this podcast was due to censorship, right, Mike? Like that was the primary issue that we had, and we wanted our voices to be heard because so many people were asking our opinions on things. But anytime we post a video on TikTok or Facebook or any of that nonsense, it's a 50-50 chance, if
boop,
not 75% chance of it coming down. So, but I just find it
dude,
rather
there, there was a time where it was a 99% chance that if we even
interesting.
reposted it, our account was gone.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and then also when it comes to the oh Jesus. Tony just texted me. I shouldn't have read that. But there was a point in time where we couldn't even share information that was coming from professionals on Facebook. But as of recently, sticking with the whole podcast talk, Mark Zuckerberg being the absolute buffoon that he is, went on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? And he's trying to be the spearheading force of free speech all of a sudden. And in this podcast, he blatantly said that the Biden administration told him and his team to eliminate all counter information when it comes to side effects from COVID and the COVID vaccine. And he goes into detail of how they tell him to do this. And then he's like, I don't know why they did this. And all the, he tried to play the good guy. And Joe Rogan, being the absolute dog that he is, called him out for it. And I loved it. But it's just funny that all of a sudden Donald Trump wins, right? And everything seems to be aligning in the atmosphere and the stars and all this other nonsense, right? Like it's feeling better for us. Like the next day after the election, that feeling, and that just seems like the atmosphere. But all of a sudden, now you see all these people coming to kiss the ring of Donald Trump. You got Mark Zuckerberg not only doing this, but also donating $1 million to Trump's inauguration. You got the dude from Google.
Jobs.
Yeah, so you got not Steve Jobs, he's dead. You're talking about the Amazon guy, Bezos.
Amazon guy, Bezos.
Donating another $1 million. You got the Google CEO donating $1 million. It's just like they're all coming to heel to Donald Trump all of a sudden, and it's like, y'all know we see right through you, right? And I think it's a play.
They know where it's going.
Oh, go ahead. Let's hear this.
They know where it's going. These rich people know where he's going. They're like, oh, I better, rub elbows with this guy or else I'm going to be canceled.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's happening. And honestly, I think there's a little bit more to it too, especially with this whole supposed TikTok ban, which I personally don't think it's going to actually go through. Senator Mikey or Hickey or something like that just announced yesterday he's actually going to be introducing, I think he did it today, introducing a piece of legislation to extend 270 days.
I saw Logic and Liberty actually talking about that.
She got it from me because I was
talking
one of the first people.
Yeah, she actually talked a little bit about her that piece of legislation on her live stream that she did. So if y'all want to go follow her, Logic and Liberty, she's an amazing individual. Talks immensely about Title IX and women's rights, actual women's rights, actual women, real women, biological women, not fake women with penises. So did I say that loud?
No, I mean it's good, man. Like that's what we're here for. I'm tired of. You're gonna see me ranting and raving over some of these things coming up because the Democrats are gonna show their true colors, and I'm gonna feast on them. I was never a guy that was like Republican versus Democrat type of person, but over the last 8 years or so, I'm fully on board with the Republicans now.
But that goes without saying. If any of you see legislation, if you're a Democrat, Independent, Republican, not affiliated, if you see any legislation that you're calling into question, regardless of what side it comes from, send it to us. Write a comment, and we will go look it up, and we will put out a video on TikTok for as long as we have it, or else it'll stay up there. Nate and I are actually, our accounts are staying up somehow. I don't know how it is.
I'm over 20K.
Let me tell you, we have not been over 20K, and I don't even know how long.
40, 50 accounts, maybe.
But if y'all are over here from TikTok, thank you so much for supporting our content, not just as the podcast, but us individually as well. And we love you for it, and we will continue to do our due diligence and do right by you, and providing you with the most accurate information that we can find.
Absolutely. And
I know you wanted to bring something up at the end.
Oh, absolutely. So we have some amazing news. I've been working with a lot of people here in my county that work within the actual Republican Party and have a lot of connections to some rather interesting individuals. And I've been a part of radio shows and some other podcasts here recently within local shows. And we were actually approached a while back. I was asked to host a radio show for a friend of mine. And they liked me so much, they started listening to our podcast and seeing what we did on social media through, Instagram and our TikToks and things of that nature. And they see the audience that we have outside of our growing YouTube, and they've actually asked us to come on to what they are developing. They have a radio show slash podcast right now, but they are actually expanding onto a news network and creating a TV show with the podcast radio show. And they have asked us to be a segment on that radio slash TV show. So coming on the 25th, we will be launching with the Radio to Bang 99.5 FM, which actually, Mike, I believe they might be changing the actual station. However, it'll still be Radio to Bang here in Houston. But we are going to be on TV and the radio with our podcast Saturdays, noon Central Time. So we are extremely excited about this.
Who'd have thought these ugly mugs would be on TV? If you'd have
But
told me this 4 years ago, I'd have been like, "You lie."
I know, and I'm so grateful to Radio to Bang, and the ownership there, along with the individuals that had connected us to them. We thank you guys so much for this opportunity, and we can't wait because it's gonna be us. It's not gonna be censored. It's not gonna be, it's gonna be us giving you guys the information that we have here on a larger platform. We still will be doing our Monday night podcast, just me and Mike, but we'll be broadcasting on Saturdays again starting the 25th of this month at noon Central Time. More details will come up with the station and the TV show and all that as they get things more solidified as we get closer. But we're definitely excited.
Yeah, and let me just say this: I am incredibly thankful for Nate and his, just full steam ahead attitude and making these connections. Without Nate, there would be no future radio. Without Nate and his wife Mimi, she is amazing in her own right and very
Uh,
very knowledgeable. And we would not be as successful in our podcast journey without her as well. And
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be as successful if I didn't have the love and support of my future wife Megan. And but I just wanted to give Nate his kudos for all the work that he's done in forging a way, a path, if you will, for our success. Because honestly, I've done very little. Um, I do put out content. I do majority of the shorts on our YouTube channel. I
Hey
don't know
man.
why.
No, we
Nate,
want to. We
Nate,
want
Nate,
to. I'm going to interrupt you here because I'm going to give you your kudos because a lot of it, we've actually gained quite a few of our subscriptions on YouTube through your shorts, man. So you bring the knowledge to our team in a lot of different areas that I don't have, more specifically in the Constitution and just law in general. So thank you, Mike, for all knowledge because a lot of what I learned is from you and then obviously our friend LJ, but that's been on the podcast a few times. So it's just team effort, man. That's what this is. That's what we want it to be. We want to grow together and, we want to explode the show. So, and we want to take all of you guys with us.
yes, and eventually, one of these days in the future, Mike and Nate will live in the same state.
Absolutely.
If we could talk the wives into making that happen. If not, Mike and Nate would just move into the same house and they can have their own house.
You know what? I honestly don't think that my wife would have an issue with that. I mean, we already sleep in separate rooms, which is a whole nother topic we could talk about another, because people are going to be in the
uh,
comments like, huh? I'll explain that later. But yeah, to go ahead and take us all, Mike. We love you guys. Thank you guys, but stay tuned. No show this Monday due to Mike's wedding. So everybody in the comments, congratulate Mike and Meg as we celebrate. We'll be posting photos and having a great time.
yes, we love you. And if you are not following the greatest podcast, soon to be joining a radio and TV show, please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, Twitch, and Patreon. And then follow uh, both of our individual channels, Nate Big for Congress and Professor Mike on TikTok. Stay blessed.